Welcome and settle in as we begin our quiet journey through the gentle history of human record keeping. If you are watching on a screen, feel free to let your eyes rest or close them altogether as the visual image slowly fades into a soft, calming darkness. Tonight, there is nowhere else you need to be and nothing you need to accomplish. We invite you to simply let your mind rest upon the quiet rhythms of past ages, allowing your breathing to slow as we drift back through the centuries to a peaceful time when life moved at a far gentler pace, long before paper existed in the forms we recognize today. Early civilizations sought simple, enduring ways to preserve thoughts, names, and stories. In the tranquil workspaces of ancient craftspeople and scribes, the daily act of writing relied entirely on basic, natural elements harvested directly from the earth. Imagine standing near the peaceful banks of the Nile River in the warm twilight of the ancient world. Here, in ancient Egypt around 2500 BCE, scribes crafted black ink by gathering fine soot from burning vegetable oil, binding it with gum arabic harvested from acacia trees, and pressing it into compact cakes that dissolved smoothly under a wet reed brush. The creation of this early writing fluid was a quiet and meditative craft. The fine carbon soot, light and delicate as shadow, was carefully collected from oil lamps and gently kneaded together with the golden, amber-like sap extracted from acacia trees. This natural resin acted as a durable binder, allowing the mixture to be shaped into small, solid cakes that dried under the desert sun. These ink cakes could easily be carried by scribes wherever their work required. Whenever a text was to be transcribed, a scribe needed only to touch a damp reed brush to the darkened cake, dissolving just enough pigment to glide smoothly across a writing surface. As the brush rested in the artisan's hand, each stroke placed upon papyrus was deliberate and serene, leaving behind lines of deep, lasting black that would outlast whole empires. The subtle scent of faint oil smoke, earthy gum, and drying papyrus filled the quiet scribe halls, creating an atmosphere of profound stillness and focus. There was no pressure to hurry, for writing was an act of preserving human memory for ages yet unborn. As you listen, let the peaceful image of this ancient craft settle into your thoughts. The smooth motion of the brush, the steady rise and fall of breath, and the slow drying of dark ink upon natural fibers all invite a sense of deep ease and calm. In the silence of those ancient evenings, the foundation of human writing was laid, stone by stone and drop by drop. As we drift further into our exploration of paper and ink, we carry with us this peaceful spirit of patient craftsmanship. The simple harmony of soot, tree resin, and water marks the quiet beginning of a rich story that spans continents and millennia. Rest deeply now, wrapped in the comforting stillness of the past, as we prepare to trace how these early methods grew and transformed through the gentle passage of time. across the quiet workshops of the ancient Mediterranean world. The preparation of writing materials was a craft rooted in patient repetition, steady breath, and deliberate care. Long before true paper journeyed across trade networks, artisans spent tranquil hours refining the surfaces of river reeds harvested from the marshy borders of the Nile. In 1st century BCE Alexandria, papermakers smoothed freshly layered papyrus sheets using polished ivory cylinders and cowrie shells, rubbing with gentle strokes until the pale cream surface lay silky and flat. This peaceful work demanded no hurry, only the rhythmic movement of hand and tool over the delicate plant fibers. Each composite sheet, formed from thin crisscrossed strips pressed together under gentle weights, began as a rough grid before hours of smoothing coaxed forth an inviting, uniform texture. As the cool ivory and polished seashells moved back and forth, they pressed down any remaining stray filaments and sealed the porous sheet. Scribes in the shaded courtyards of great libraries could then guide their reed pens across the page without effort or interruption, allowing dark ink to rest upon the surface in clean, enduring lines. Across vast distances, where trade routes wound upward through cooler climates and mist-shrouded peaks, another quiet tradition of manuscript preparation was taking shape. Beginning around the 1st century BCE in the high mountain valleys of Gandhara, Buddhist scribes crafted supple manuscript sheets from the layered inner bark of the Himalayan birch tree, rubbing the bark with sweet vegetable oils and smoothing it with river stones. High among the valleys, where snowmelt fed clear mountain streams, the birch tree offered its thin, papery layers of pale inner bark. Artisans gathered this flexible material with quiet reverence, peeling long, clean bands without harming the growing trees beneath. They understood that raw bark possessed a natural stiffness, prone to curling as it dried in the mountain air. And so they developed gentle methods to transform the wild harvest into soft, lasting leaves for holy texts. The sweet vegetable oils absorbed slowly into the wood fibers, imbuing the material with a warm golden hue and a subtle, calming scent that filled the silent mountain monasteries. As rounded river stones were rubbed across the oiled surfaces, their natural polish worked away every small ridge, making the bark supple and pliable under the hand. The cool weight of the stones, shaped by centuries of tumbling water, coaxed out a velvety, matte finish, ideally suited to hold fine black ink without bleeding. Once prepared, these durable manuscript leaves could be written upon, layered together, or tied into neat bundles that preserved the thoughts of scholars through long centuries. In the quiet hours of dusk, as light faded across the high slopes, the scribes sat with these finished sheets, finding solace in the quiet craft of preservation, while mountain winds rustled softly through the surrounding birch forests. Though separated by thousands of miles, these ancient craftspeople shared a quiet reverence for the written surface. Whether smoothing pale stalks of Egyptian reeds or tending to the mountain harvest of Himalayan bark. Their patient labor transformed the raw elements of nature into gentle vessels for human thought. Each rhythmic stroke of ivory, shell, or stone left behind a smooth expanse, ready to hold ancient words peacefully. In the quiet imperial precincts of Luoyang during the Eastern Han Dynasty, daily life moved with a steady, soothing rhythm. Here, amidst the gentle murmur of shaded courtyard fountains and the slow rustle of bamboo leaves in the evening breeze, scholars and court officials spent their hours recording the subtle details of a vast realm. For generations, writing had relied upon heavy wooden tablets, cumbersome bamboo slips bound together with silk thread, or rare textiles that were too costly for everyday record-keeping. These traditional materials, while enduring, were heavy to transport and awkward to store. Yet, within the peaceful workshops of the imperial court, a quiet transformation was taking place, one that sought to turn humble, everyday plant fibers into a lightweight, smooth surface capable of absorbing liquid ink with gentle, effortless grace. It was within this tranquil environment of trial and quiet observation that the art of papermaking found its first standardized form. In 105 CE, Han Dynasty court official Cai Lun standardized papermaking in Luoyang by soaking mulberry bark, hemp waste, and worn fishing nets into a soft pulp, which was lifted on fine bamboo screens to dry in the gentle sun. Each component of this thoughtful recipe was chosen for its unique fibrous structure and modest origin. The harvested inner bark of mulberry branches yielded long, supple strands. Old fishing nets, softened by long exposure to river currents, brought strength and flexibility, and discarded hemp remnants provided density. Gathered in deep earthenware vats filled with fresh water, these materials were left to soak and were beaten gently into a soft slurry, where millions of tiny cellulose fibers floated peacefully in suspension, waiting to bind together without thread or resin. The physical act of forming each individual sheet of paper became a serene, rhythmic ritual requiring steady hands and quiet focus. Craftspeople lowered rectangular molds, fitted with fine screens, woven from thin strips of split bamboo, directly into the cloudy depth of the water vat. With a gentle, deliberate swaying motion, the artisan lifted the screen horizontally upward, encouraging the floating fibers to settle evenly across the surface. As the clean water filtered slowly back into the vat through the tiny gaps of the bamboo mesh, a thin, uniform sheet of webbed plant fibers remained behind, resting softly like a veil of morning mist. Every movement in the workshop was deliberate, quiet, and unhurried, matching the slow drip of water falling back into the basin and reflecting the deep, restful patience of ancient handcrafts. Once drained of excess liquid, the delicate, damp sheets were carefully transferred onto smooth wooden boards to dry undisturbed in the daylight, under the gentle warmth of the afternoon sun. Moisture drifted away into the air, allowing the interlocking fibers to contract and bond firmly into a single, light sheet. The finished paper possessed a smooth, warm texture, remarkably resilient, yet light to carry, perfectly suited for the smooth movement of a soft brush dipped in dark carbon ink. As these newly created sheets dried quietly, they marked a gentle turning point, a moment where simple plant fibers, calm water, and soft sunlight came together to craft a surface that would hold human thoughts for centuries to come. As we journey across oceans and centuries, the story of paper unfolds in the quiet green canopy of ancient Mesoamerica, where thick tropical forests breathed softly under morning mists. Long before modern methods emerged, communities in these lush environments maintained a deep, harmonious relationship with the flora surrounding their villages, learning how every trunk and leaf offered unique gifts. In this tranquil world, creating writing surfaces was a meditative craft passed down through generations, attuned to the steady cadence of nature. The rainforest provided an abundance of natural resources, and among the tall trees, certain species possessed fibers ideally suited for forming smooth, enduring materials. The ambient hum of the forest, the gentle whisper of wind through broad leaves, and the soft trickle of nearby streams formed a soothing backdrop for artisans who spent their days coaxing raw bark into workable sheets. This thoughtful work required patience, an understanding of seasonal moisture, and a reverence for the gentle transformation of raw timber into quiet records of time. As the morning sun filtered through the foliage, craftspeople prepared their tools with deliberate slowness, honoring the quiet discipline of their heritage. The central element of this gentle process involved selecting specific trees whose inner layers contained long, pliable fibers capable of binding together cleanly when treated with water and rhythmic pressure. Beginning around the 5th century in the Maya lowlands, craftspeople harvested the smooth inner bark of wild fig trees, softened it in warm lime water, and gently beat the fibers with grooved stone pestles into flexible sheets of amate paper. The soaking in warm lime water served to break down tough plant compounds, releasing natural binders while rendering the fibers remarkably soft. Once properly steeped, the long strips were laid upon flat wooden boards in crisscrossing patterns, creating a cohesive grid. The repetitive sound of stone pestles tapping against damp bark resonated softly through the workspace, a calming rhythm that gradually merged the separate strands into a uniform surface. Each stroke of the stone was soft yet deliberate, spreading the fibers evenly. Once flattened, the damp sheets dried gradually in the open air, leaving behind a smooth, durable paper carrying the subtle, grounding aroma of the forest. These flexible sheets of amate paper possessed a rich tone and tactile surface wonderfully suited for painted glyphs, intricate calendars, and historical records. Artisans joined long strips together, folding them into accordion-style books that could be expanded softly or stored away with ease. The natural durability of wild fig fibers gave these manuscripts surprising resilience, preserving astronomical observations and quiet stories for centuries. To hold one of these early codices was to touch a material crafted entirely by hand from the forest itself, bridging human expression with the natural world. The artistry involved in Amate papermaking reflects a timeless desire to record memory with care and quiet elegance. As the paper rested in the soft shade of ancient archives, it preserved the thoughts of a culture attuned to the movement of stars and the cycles of the earth. Resting under the slow passage of time, these ancient sheets remain a peaceful testament to patience, inviting us to drift into quiet stillness, wrapped in the soothing memory of rustling leaves and steady craftsmanship. In the quiet valleys of ancient China, the art of papermaking unfolded not through hasty mechanical production, but through a slow, rhythmic dialogue with the natural world. Long before paper became a simple utility for everyday notes, it was crafted with patient reverence, honoring the quiet rhythm of changing seasons and the distinct character of local flora. Artisans gathered raw plant materials near clear mountain streams, where cool, untroubled water washed away impurities and softened raw bark over days of steady soaking. Each step was guided by generations of shared wisdom, where master papermakers observed how the mountain mist softened the bark and how the sun settled upon the water. There was no rush in this delicate process. Time itself was considered an essential ingredient, allowing the raw organic fibers to loosen gracefully under the gentle, persistent influence of flowing water. The atmosphere in these early rural workshops was peaceful and deliberate, shaped by the soft sound of dipping bamboo screens and the steady, soothing dripping of water returning to the riverbed below. As the craft matured through centuries of observation, distinct regional traditions emerged across the vast landscape, each adapting thoughtfully to the specific topography, mineral soils, and local climate of its countryside. In the lush province of Anhui, the undulating slopes provided an extraordinary natural setting for one of the most celebrated forms of paper in history. During the Tang Dynasty in Jingxian, China, artisans laid damp sheets of Xuan paper across sun-warmed limestone hillsides, relying on morning dew and soft sunlight to naturally bleach the Qingtan tree fibers into a velvety ivory. This gentle outdoor whitening technique avoided harsh artificial chemicals, preserving the structural strength of the sandalwood tree bark, while imparting a luminous, subtle warmth to every individual sheet. The pale limestone rocks acted as natural drying beds and mild alkaline buffers, carefully protecting the damp paper as it released its moisture into the cool mountain breeze beneath a clear, quiet sky. This harmonious interaction between mineral stone, morning sun, and pure fiber yielded a surface of exceptional smoothness, deeply cherished by calligraphers and landscape painters for its quiet responsiveness. The long, resilient fibers of the Kington tree allowed the finished paper to absorb liquid ink with gentle control, capturing every soft nuance of a brushstroke without warping or deteriorating across centuries of preservation. As each sheet dried slowly upon the quiet hillsides, it seemed to absorb the serene calm of the surrounding environment, embodying a profound stillness that eventually carried into the quiet study rooms of scholars across the empire. The natural ivory tone offered a restful backdrop for dark pine soot inks, allowing each stroke to settle upon the page with clarity, depth, and timeless grace. To handle a sheet of traditional Xuan paper was to feel the gentle accumulation of natural patience, the quiet work of sun, dew, stone, and human hands working in seamless alignment. The process offered a comforting reminder that true strength and beauty require no force, only time, attention, and harmony with the quiet rhythms of nature. As evening descended over the quiet valleys of Jinxian and the limestone slopes gradually cooled under the twilight sky, the dried sheets were gathered, smooth and still, ready to hold gentle thoughts across generations, while the land rested in peaceful darkness. As night settles softly over ancient forested hills, the history of papermaking in Japan unfolds with a quiet, patient rhythm. Deep within misty mountain valleys, early artisans learned to work in harmony with the natural qualities of plants growing along clear stream banks. Every step of their craft was measured and unhurried, relying on seasonal cycles and cold water to gently transform wild flora into leaves of paper. During the 8th century in Japan, craftspeople harvested the glossy inner bark of wild gampi bushes and steeped the fibers in wood ash lye, producing an ultra-smooth, golden paper whose natural resins naturally protected it from dampness. This rare sheet possessed a warm luster that softly captured ambient light, preserving sacred texts against the subtle decay of humid seasons. The process required immense care, as the wild shrub resisted easy cultivation, making each sheet a quiet tribute to the pristine wilderness from which it was gathered. The surface of this early paper was remarkably smooth, allowing ink to settle gracefully without feathering or fading over time. As generations passed and artistic traditions deepened within ancient imperial courts, papermakers continued to refine their methods with quiet devotion. They worked extensively with cultivated mulberry stems, peeling away the rough outer bark to reach the supple white fibers underneath. This delicate work unfolded during the stillness of early winter, when icy mountain streams kept the plant material clean and pure. In calm workshop spaces, long strands of bark were immersed in clear water and beaten with wooden mallets until they separated into fine, soft threads. The steady, hypnotic rhythm of wood striking fiber echoed gently through the cool air, establishing a peaceful cadence of craftsmanship that felt entirely removed from the rush of the outside world. In Heian period Japan, papermakers added a mucilaginous extract from the roots of the Tororoei hibiscus to mulberry slurry, which suspended the long plant fibers so they drifted smoothly into ultra-thin, cloud-like sheets of washi. This clear liquid, known traditionally as *nary*, prevented the long plant strands from clumping or sinking too quickly to the bottom of the wooden vat. As the artisan gently swayed the fine bamboo screen through the water, the suspended fibers intertwined into a delicate, seamless web. The repetitive swaying motion was rhythmic and soothing, akin to the slow rocking of gentle waves. When lifted from the water, the screen held a pale, translucent sheet of paper that glistened softly in the quiet light before being pressed and dried upon smooth wooden boards. To hold a finished sheet of traditional washi is to feel the quiet breath of nature preserved in tangible form. Its surface carries no harsh glare, offering only a gentle, light diffusing quality that invites peaceful contemplation. The subtle variations in tone, the visible weave of natural plant fibers, and the soft texture of each sheet reflect a harmonious bond between raw materials and human patience. As ink brushed across its surface dried into lasting record, the paper remained flexible, light, and enduring through centuries. As night deepens, the memory of these plant fibers floating effortlessly in calm mountain water brings a soothing stillness, encouraging your thoughts to rest as gently as paper settling upon a wooden frame. In the misty mountain valleys of 10th century Anhui province in eastern China, a quiet tradition unfolded far from the bustling courts and crowded market towns. Here, surrounded by ancient forests of pine clinging to damp slopes, artisans worked in patient harmony with the subtle rhythms of the land. The air in these mountain forests was cool, scented with damp earth and the clean fragrance of resin. In the historic region of Huzhou, ink making was pursued not with haste, but with a deep, meditative focus that transformed raw mountain materials into tools of enduring beauty. Each morning began with the deliberate selection of timber, choosing branches that held just the right density of natural oils, ensuring that when burned, they would yield a smoke fine enough to produce carbon soot of extraordinary purity. The craftsmen understood that creating something intended to endure for centuries required an unhurried mind and a quiet respect for every step of the process. Within the tranquil workshops, low kilns constructed from local river clay were kept burning at a steady, gentle simmer throughout the cool days. Resinous pine branches were carefully laid inside, allowed to smolder slowly in the restricted, low-oxygen atmosphere to generate a thick, velvety plume of dark smoke. Above these slow-burning fires, rows of smooth ceramic tiles were precisely suspended to gather the fine soot as it settled gently against their cool surfaces. After many hours of patient monitoring, artisans would gently sweep the collected black powder from the tiles and combine it with a carefully prepared binding agent derived from deer hide glue, which provided both structural integrity and a rich gloss. A small measure of aromatic clove oil was kneaded into the warm paste to soften the smoky aroma and impart a delicate fragrance, after which the mixture was repeatedly pounded and worked by hand before being pressed into carved wooden molds to create the prized ink sticks of 10th century Huzhu. Once removed from their wooden molds, which were often inscribed with subtle poetry or delicate mountain landscape patterns, the fresh ink sticks entered a prolonged resting period. They were laid on beds of clean ash inside dark, well-ventilated curing rooms where the air moved with only the faintest breeze. For many months, the moisture within the ink sticks evaporated at an extraordinarily slow rate, preventing any internal stress from warping or cracking the dense material. As time passed, the surface hardened into a deep, matte sheen that felt pleasantly smooth and cool to the touch. This careful aging ensured that when the ink stick was eventually held in a scholar's hand, it would feel balanced, solid, and completely harmonious. Decades later, in a quiet study lit by soft lantern light, a calligrapher would place a few drops of clear spring water onto a smooth slate inkstone. Holding one of these historic ink sticks vertically, they would move it in slow, rhythmic circles, listening to the soft whisper of stone meeting cured carbon as the water turned into a rich, dark liquid. A subtle hint of pine smoke and sweet clove oil would rise once more into the stillness of the evening air. The dark ink flowed smoothly from the brush onto sheets of delicate paper, carrying thoughts across time with the same quiet grace that had guided the artisans in the mountains so long ago. As papermaking techniques continued to refine across centuries and regions, the craft intersected with traditions that valued patience, discipline, and quiet contemplation. In the peaceful courtyards and serene workshops of East Asia, papermakers and monastic artisans sought new ways to transform plant and rag fibers into surfaces fit for sacred texts. Water remained the gentle medium through which all these elements met, carrying dyes and organic fibers into harmonious alignment. Deep wooden vats filled with natural botanicals were tended with care, steeping slowly until the liquid attained deep, soothing hues of blue, brown, or ochre. The process of dyeing paper required a steady hand and a calm rhythm, as sheets of rag paper were submerged repeatedly into liquid baths. With each gentle dipping, the porous fibers absorbed the rich pigment, darkening slowly from a pale sky shade to a deep tone that mirrored the quiet twilight hours. The quiet patience demanded by this process turned every workshop into a sanctuary of slow creation, where time seemed to move at the soft pace of drying paper, suspended in the evening breeze. During the Han Dynasty in China, monastic scribes prepared ceremonial manuscripts by steeping rag paper in baths of natural indigo dye. using fine wolf hair brushes dipped in liquid gold leaf to draw glowing calligraphy across the midnight blue sheets. This delicate practice required an extraordinary level of devotion and focus, as the gold pigment had to be suspended in fine binding agents to flow smoothly from the brush tip. The contrast between the deep indigo background and the warm, radiant gold created a quiet visual harmony, resembling stars set against a clear night sky. Scribes sat in silent rooms, grinding gold foil with natural glues until the mixture reached a fluid consistency. Each brush stroke was executed with measured breath, allowing the flexible wolf hair bristles to yield gold onto the darkened paper without damaging the delicate fibers. The manuscripts produced through this painstaking method were meant for slow, contemplative reflection. As the ink dried into a soft metallic luster, the sacred characters seemed to float upon the dark blue paper, capturing a sense of stillness and timeless elegance that invited the mind to rest. The preservation of such illuminated works highlights how ancient artisans understood the enduring qualities of natural materials when brought together with care. Indigo, extracted from fermented plants, bound securely with cellulose fibers, creating a light, fast background that retained its richness through centuries of quiet storage in temple archives. Similarly, pure gold leaf contained no volatile elements that would fade or tarnish over time, ensuring that the warm, glowing calligraphy remained as vibrant and calm as the day it was first rendered across the page. The peaceful atmosphere of these scriptoriums extended into every step of the work, from grinding pigments to hanging finished scrolls to dry in shadowy corridors. In the silence of these ancient spaces, the gentle rustle of paper and soft dipping of brushes created a soothing rhythm. To contemplate these historical sheets is to enter a world where patience was the primary tool, offering a restful reminder of the beauty that arises when craft, nature, and human focus quietly align in tranquility. As trade routes gently expanded across mountain passes and fertile valleys, the craft of papermaking adapted to the climate, natural resources, and distinct artistic traditions of each region it touched. In the peaceful, scholarly centers of the early medieval world, artisans sought ways to refine the surface texture of their pages to support the precise strokes of calligraphers. During the 8th century, papermakers in Samarkand and Baghdad refined paper production by coating rag sheets in a clear starch paste made from boiled wheat flour, creating a satin-smooth surface that kept ink from feathering into the fibers. This process, known as sizing, transformed raw, absorbent sheets into refined surfaces, allowing dark inks to sit crisply without bleeding into blurred edges. The warm, mild aroma of simmering wheat starch filled the tranquil workshops, where paper was hung to dry in shaded courtyards. Each sheet was polished with smooth stones until it carried a subtle sheen, inviting the gentle stroke of a reed pen across a surface perfectly balanced between strength and softness. The meticulous care given to these early sheets ensured that written words could be preserved with quiet clarity. Farther to the east, high within the misty elevations of the Himalayas, another enduring papermaking tradition unfolded in harmony with the rugged landscape. In 12th century Nepal, Himalayan craftspeople harvested the inner bark of high-altitude lacta bushes, simmering the fibers with wood ash before floating the soft slurry over woven cloth screens in quiet mountain pools. The lacta plant grew wild along forest slopes, and its long, flexible fibers gave the resulting paper extraordinary durability and natural resistance to decay. The preparation of lacta paper was a rhythmic endeavor, deeply attuned to the gentle rhythms of nature. Craftspeople carefully harvested the bark, taking care to leave the shrub roots intact so the plants could naturally regenerate over time. The bark was rinsed in crisp stream water, then boiled slowly with alkaline wood ash until the tough plant walls softened into delicate ribbons. When beaten with wooden mallets upon smooth stones, the fibers loosened into a supple pulp that drifted effortlessly across water-filled wooden frames. As the screens were lifted into the crisp air, water drained away through the fine weave of the cloth, leaving behind a uniform, textured layer of interwoven fibers. Once lifted from the serene pools, these frames were set under the sun to dry, allowing mountain breezes to bind the damp fibers into strong sheets. The natural elasticity of lacta bark gave the finished paper remarkable resilience, remaining flexible across generations of handling. Monks in remote monasteries favored this paper for recording sacred texts, knowing its fibrous structure could withstand damp mountain air and cold seasonal changes without growing brittle. The patient craftsmanship practiced from ancient silk routes to Himalayan valleys reveals a shared human devotion to transforming raw natural elements into lasting vessels of thought. Each step from the slow boiling of wheat starch paste to the gentle floating of bark pulp required a steady hand and an unhurried appreciation for the natural world. As evening settles over these quiet workshops, the peaceful labor of early papermakers lingers like a soft lullaby, inviting restful thoughts and quiet dreams. In the peaceful, sun-dappled valleys of 12th century Al-Andalus, knowledge and craftsmanship moved with the calm, unhurried grace of a slow-flowing river. As the delicate art of papermaking traveled west across distant trade routes, it found a serene sanctuary in the Iberian Peninsula, where fertile soils, clear alpine streams, and centuries of artisan wisdom gracefully converged. The region quickly became a renowned haven for papercraft, drawing upon local agricultural resources and recycled domestic textiles to produce sheets that were both remarkably supple and extraordinarily durable. Beneath the soft, golden light of the Mediterranean sky, this ancient practice evolved into something deeply connected to the natural landscape. Workers gathered discarded linens and worn flax garments from surrounding towns, placing them into stone basins where clear spring water could gently loosen the resilient plant fibers. The slow soaking process allowed the threads to unwind gradually without harsh chemical treatment, preserving the organic strength of the linen. It was in this tranquil setting, during the year 1151 CE in the town of Zadova, Spain, that Andalusian craftspeople established Western Europe's first water-powered paper mill, harnessing the steady current of the Albaida River to drive wooden trip hammers that gently pulverized flax and linen rags into a soft, fibrous slurry. Before this quiet mechanical innovation, the preparation of paper pulp had relied almost entirely on arduous manual pounding with heavy hand pestles, a slow process requiring immense physical effort to break down resilient plant structures. By thoughtfully connecting their machinery to the river's steady flow, the craftspeople allowed the natural momentum of water to take over the heaviest labor. As the river turned the broad wooden wheel, heavy timber arms lifted and fell in a rhythmic, continuous cadence, softly thumping against the wet textiles, until they yielded into thousands of delicate, suspended threads. The soft, repetitive thrum of the wooden trip hammers merged seamlessly with the ambient murmurs of the surrounding countryside, creating a soothing soundscape that echoed across the river valley like a quiet, comforting pulse. Inside the mill, skilled paper masters would submerge rectangular wooden frames fitted with fine wire or woven reed screens into the deep vat of milky suspension. With practiced, deliberate movements, they lifted the screens horizontally from the liquid, allowing the excess water to drain away smoothly through the mesh, while leaving behind an even, delicate layer of interwoven fibers. Each newly formed sheet was carefully transferred onto soft wool felts, where gentle pressure squeezed out remaining moisture before the paper was taken to the drying lofts to cure in the ambient air. As evening settled over Zadova, the gentle breeze carried the clean scent of damp linen and fresh river water through the open timber shutters of the workshop. The steady turn of the Albaida River continued its silent work, guiding the wooden mechanisms through their restful cycle without pause. In this harmonious space, raw elements of nature were transformed through patience and quiet ingenuity into smooth surfaces destined to hold centuries of written memory. The quiet rhythm of the mill offered a soothing constancy, a quiet lullaby of wood and water that invited rest and peaceful reflection under the evening stars. With each passing hour, the gentle flow of the stream remained unchanged, cradling the valley in deep tranquility. As the late 13th century folded into European history, the delicate art of papermaking found a peaceful sanctuary along the clear streams of central Italy. Nestled within the quiet valleys of the Marche region, the town of Fabriano became a haven for artisans who sought to refine the techniques brought westward along ancient trade routes. Scribes of the medieval era had long depended upon parchment crafted from animal skins, valuing its firm resistance to liquid inks. By contrast, early European rag papers remained soft and porous, like unglazed linen. When a scribe touched a freshly dipped quill to these early sheets, the dark ink would often bleed outward into delicate branches, soaking deep into the fibers instead of resting cleanly upon the surface. In the tranquil atmosphere of these mountain workshops, papermakers observed this flaw and spent quiet years testing new methods to seal the paper's face without sacrificing its supple softness. Their efforts culminated in a remarkably simple yet transformative technique derived from the very material paper was replacing. In 1282, artisans in Fabriano, Italy, introduced gelatin sizing made from animal parchment clippings, which gave rag paper a subtle, water-resistant sheen that allowed feather quills to glide effortlessly across the page. By simmering discarded scraps of parchment in pure water, craftsmen produced a clear, collagen-rich broth that was filtered into shallow dipping vats. Freshly pressed sheets of rag paper were gently immersed into this warm bath, allowing the fibers to absorb just enough gelatin to coat every crevice. Once coated, the sheets were pressed to remove excess liquid and hung to dry on smooth horsehair lines in high, breezy lofts. As air moved softly through open wooden shutters, the gelatin set into an invisible film, binding the surface fibers together and endowing the paper with a remarkably smooth, protective finish. This subtle coating transformed the physical rhythm of reading and writing across scriptoriums and scholars' studies alike. Scribes sitting at their wooden desks found that a goose quill, freshly trimmed and dipped in deep iron gall ink, could move with smooth grace across the sized surface. The ink sat cleanly on top of the sheet, producing crisp, dark letters that retained their sharp boundaries without feathering into the page. The subtle sheen also protected the paper against humidity, ensuring that written records could endure for centuries without losing their clarity. As night fell over the scriptorium, the soft scratching of quills created a soothing, rhythmic whisper, filling the quiet rooms with an atmosphere of peaceful focus. Outside the workshop walls, the evening air grew cool and still, carrying the faint scent of damp wood across the valley. Inside, neat stacks of dried, sized paper lay piled upon heavy oak tables, their surfaces reflecting the soft glow of lantern light. Each finished sheet represented a harmonious blending of materials, parchment scraps, giving new life to rag fiber, water and air working together to yield a surface of quiet perfection. As the mill wheels slowed to a gentle rest in the mountain stream, the town of Fabriano slept, leaving behind a legacy of craftsmanship that would quietly support the words and thoughts of generations to come. As dawn quietly bathed the stone scriptoria of Europe in soft illumination, the steady, rhythmic rituals of document creation began not with the stroke of a pen, but with the patient gathering of Earth's quiet gifts. Monastic scribes across medieval Europe prepared durable black ink, using Aleppo oak galls, small spherical growths created on oak leaves by gall wasps, which released tannic acid when crushed and mixed with iron sulfate crystals in clear river water. This delicate chemical transformation unfolded without haste in small earthenware pots resting on wooden workbenches. The crushed oak galls, formed through a quiet defense mechanism of the tree, yielded a concentrated botanical extract rich in natural tannins. When combined with the pale green salt of iron sulfate and stirred gently in pure stream water, the fluid slowly deepened into an intense, dark compound that bound intimately with the fibers of parchment and paper. Unlike earlier soot-based inks that merely rested upon the surface of the sheet, this iron gall ink etched itself gently into the material, enduring through centuries without losing its solemn clarity. The scribes worked in unhurried silence, straining the mixture through fine linen cloths until it flowed smoothly from the nib of a carefully trimmed goose quill, leaving dark, elegant marks upon the pale pages. While scribes refined the dark medium of their written thoughts, the physical foundation of the page was undergoing its own quiet revolution in the peaceful valleys of Italy. Along the babbling streams that powered early paper mills, artisans worked in harmony with water and stone, transforming discarded rags of flax and hemp into soft, supple sheets of paper. In late 13th century Fabriano, papermakers stitched delicate shapes of bent brass wire onto their woven screens, leaving faint variations in paper thickness that revealed glowing translucent watermarks when held against morning sunlight. These subtle wire motifs, ranging from simple crosses and stars to graceful animal silhouettes, slightly thinned the wet pulp directly above where the wire was tied. As the newly formed sheet was pressed between felt sheets and dried upon wooden racks, the displaced fibers preserved the mark invisibly within the texture of the page. Only when a sheet was lifted toward a gentle light source did the hidden emblem appear, shimmering like a faint ghost woven directly into the fabric of the paper itself. This delicate technique gave each papermaking house its signature, signaling a commitment to quality and craftsmanship that required no words. Together, these quiet innovations created a harmonious medium that preserved human knowledge with unprecedented grace and longevity. The smooth, watermarked paper provided a gentle, receptive surface for the dark iron gall ink, allowing the ink to dry evenly without feathering across the sheet. In the quiet solitude of medieval libraries and scriptoria, the soft rustle of drying paper and the measured dip of the quill formed a restful background rhythm. Each completed leaf was a testament to the slow, deliberate mastery of natural elements: oak leaf galls, river water, iron crystals, brass wire, and plant fibers, all brought together by patient human hands. As evening fell over the workshops and monasteries, the tools were cleaned and laid to rest, leaving behind stacks of pristine, handcrafted pages that would safely carry the thoughts of an era across the tranquil spans of time. high in the cool mountain sanctuary of 14th century East Africa. Stone walls sheltered a world defined by silence and measured devotion. Within these quiet halls, sunlight shifted slowly across broad stone tables, marking the steady, peaceful rhythm of days dedicated to the preservation of human thought and sacred scripture. Monastic scriptoria served as gentle havens where time seemed to expand, entirely removed from the restless movement of the valleys far below. Scribes moved through their duties with unhurried grace, gathering and preparing their natural materials with a quiet, meditative focus passed down carefully through long generations of artisans. The crisp, clean mountain air carried the faint, comforting sense of cured parchment, crushed earthy pigments, and dried herbs, creating an environment perfectly suited for slow and delicate handwork. Here, every individual task was performed with patient reverence, from the careful stretching of calfskin vellum across smooth wooden frames to the quiet assembly of bound manuscript codices. The atmosphere in the scriptorium was one of deep and restorative stillness, where the faint scrape of a horn spoon or the soft rustle of turned pages were the only sounds accompanying the peaceful passage of hours. The creation of writing fluid was itself an act of contemplative craftsmanship, relying on local flora and time-honored techniques to yield a rich and enduring medium. In 14th century Ethiopian scriptoria, monastic scribes crafted durable black ink by slow roasting the oily seeds of the native *nug* plant, grinding the charred soot, and binding it with clear acacia gum. This delicate preparation process required immense patience, as the oil-rich seeds were warmed slowly over low, smoldering embers, allowing carbon to form gently without scorching into fragile ash. Scribes then ground the dark, velvety residue into an exceptionally fine powder against smooth basalt mortar stones, working in smooth, rhythmic circles until the powder reached an almost weightless texture. When dissolved into pure spring water and blended with translucent, golden acacia resin, the soot formed a smooth liquid that clung effortlessly to reed pens without bleeding into the fine fibers of the vellum. The natural oils lingering within the charred seed particles provided the ink with extraordinary resilience, ensuring it would withstand mountain humidity and the gentle passage of centuries while maintaining its deep, lustrous tone. With their inkwells carefully filled and sheets of parchment arranged, the scribes began the serene work of copying ancient texts line by line across the supple pages. Each stroke of the reed nib was executed with steady, calm precision, the dark fluid settling smoothly into the prepared hide to form clean, elegant letters that seemed to rest upon the page with effortless permanence. As twilight gradually settled over the high plateau and soft shadows lengthened across the stone scriptorium floor, the freshly written manuscript leaves were set aside in neat, quiet rows to dry naturally in the cool evening air. The deep black lines slowly settled into an enduring, matte finish, preserving words meant to be read by quiet eyes in generations yet to come. In the soft half-light of the fading day, the scriptorium returned to absolute tranquility, allowing the newly finished pages to rest in the silent, peaceful sanctuary of the monastery. In the quiet sanctuary of 14th century Armenian scriptoria, high above the stone valleys, where the mountain air blew cool and soft, the rhythm of manuscript production was defined by patience, quiet light, and an unwavering devotion to detail. Within these peaceful monastic rooms, scribes and illuminators sat at tall wooden sloping desks, surrounded by jars of ground minerals, dried botanical binders, and stacks of freshly pressed handmade rag paper. The preparation of each individual leaf was a silent, meditative ritual, taking place long before a single drop of ink or stroke of color met the page. Cotton and linen fibers, pounded gently in water mills and settled into smooth sheets, possessed a natural warmth and subtle texture. Yet their open weave presented a delicate challenge for the fine, microscopic brushwork required in sacred books. To prepare the paper to receive intricate details without feathering or bleeding, the artisan had to transform the surface, sealing its porous nature with subtle, organic coatings that would hold the pigments perfectly in place for centuries to come. The solution devised by these dedicated craftsmen was both remarkably simple and profoundly effective. In 14th century Armenian scriptoria, monastic illuminators coated rag paper with a delicate glaze of whipped egg whites, known as glare, creating a translucent, porcelain-like surface that kept mineral pigments resting smoothly on top of the page. This delicate coating was prepared by whisking fresh egg whites until they formed a soft foam, then allowing the mixture to settle overnight into a clear, golden liquid. Applied with broad, soft schiefer brushes or smooth sponges across the beaten sheets, the glare dried into an almost imperceptible membrane, binding tightly with the underlying rag fibers. The result was a page that possessed a gentle, velvety sheen, gleaming softly under the calm light filtering through high scriptorium windows. As the liquid evaporated into the still air of the monastery, the paper acquired an impervious yet supple barrier, perfectly balanced between flexible strength and quiet elegance. Upon this porcelain-smooth foundation, the illuminator could work with extraordinary precision, applying rich inks and vibrant mineral colors that remained remarkably crisp and pure. Finely ground lapis lazuli for deep mountain blues, cinnabar for radiant reds, and malachite for soft, earthy greens could be laid down in thin, controlled washes without sinking into the soft paper base below. Each stroke rested serenely upon the glare coating, preserving the brilliance of the raw minerals and allowing light to reflect evenly across the illuminated borders and delicate marginalia. The slow, rhythmic process of laying down glare, letting it cure in the quiet atmosphere of the workroom, and carefully applying line after line of script created a feeling of timeless stillness that filled every corner of the scriptorium. As the finished leaves dried, they were stacked gently between smooth wooden boards, resting under light weights to remain completely flat and even. The combination of rag fiber and glaire sizing created manuscripts of exceptional durability, capable of enduring the passage of centuries without losing their luminous clarity. In these peaceful mountain retreats, paper was not merely a passive carrier of text, but a carefully sculpted canvas, brought into harmony through the subtle interplay of simple organic elements, steady hands, and quiet dedication to the art of the book. As evening settled softly over the Tuscan hills, the workshop of a Renaissance artisan turned inward toward the quiet, rhythmic work of material preparation. Within the studio, surrounded by earthenware jars of ground minerals, dried plant resins, and stacked sheets of handmade rag paper, the craftsman moved with deliberate, unhurried purpose, while iron Gall ink was widely favored across Europe for standard administrative scripts and formal legal registries. Carbon-based inks retained a unique and revered place in the artist's repertoire. Carbon possessed an enduring chemical stability, completely immune to the acidity and gradual fading that could alter other pigments over long passages of time. The soot gathered from oil lamps had served scriptoria for centuries. Yet master craftsmen continually sought subtle variations in texture and undertone to suit delicate silver point underdrawings, fine sketches, and precise musical notation. They turned their attention to the vineyard trimmings left behind after the autumn harvest, finding in simple, slender wooden cuttings the source for an exceptionally refined pigment. The atmosphere in these Florentine workshops was one of quiet observation, where fire, air, and clay were managed with gentle precision, allowing natural materials to transform without flame into something soft, rich, and enduring. The creation of this pigment required absolute patience and careful containment. Slender, dried cuttings trimmed from the grapevines were carefully selected for their uniform thickness and clean, unblemished wood. These twigs were packed tightly into clay vessels and sealed securely to exclude all atmospheric air, ensuring that the wood would slowly char through heat rather than burn away into pale ash. In 15th century Florence, artist scribes crafted vine black ink by slowly charring slender grapevine cuttings inside sealed earthenware crucibles, yielding a cool-toned, velvety carbon powder that dissolved effortlessly in gum water. Unlike the slightly oily lampblack harvested from burning tallow or oil lamps, this charred vine material yielded a remarkably matte, exceptionally smooth texture. When ground thoroughly upon a hard porphyry stone with a glass muller, the charred particles broke down into uniform, microscopic grains that possessed a subtle, slate-like coolness. Blended gently with distilled water and a carefully measured binder of acacia tree gum, the velvety powder suspended evenly settling or clumping, flowing smoothly from the split tip of a quill across paper. When drawn across the surface of paper, fine black ink offered the scribe an exquisite degree of tonal control and physical ease. A single dip of the nib could lay down a line of soft, velvety darkness, or when diluted with a drop of clear water, produce a wash of gentle, smoky gray that rested light as a shadow upon the page. Scribes particularly appreciated how the fluid rested upon the woven linen fibers of early European papers, neither bleeding uncontrollably nor pooling into thick crusts, but settling evenly into the sheet. As the moisture gradually evaporated into the calm, quiet air of the workroom, the acacia gum hardened into a transparent, protective matrix, binding the carbon particles permanently to the page. Watching the ink dry became a restful, almost hypnotic rhythm, a quiet transition from liquid sheen to soft, permanent shadow in the peaceful stillness of the workshop. This harmonious blend of grapevine, earth, fire, and water preserved the quiet thoughts of the human hand, remaining steady and unchanged across the quiet expanse of centuries. As twilight fell across the quiet stone walls of medieval Europe, the pace of work inside monastic scriptoria slowed to match the soft dip of the quill. Within these tranquil spaces, scribes and illuminators moved with deliberate care, tending not only to the parchment before them, but also to the delicate materials that gave life to their manuscript pages. In 15th century European scriptoria, illuminators gathered fine soot from burning seasoned beechwood logs to make bistre ink, a translucent amber liquid that dried into a golden brown hue reminiscent of late afternoon light. The preparation of this ink was a quiet art unto itself, requiring long hours of patient observation, while the fine carbon settled against cool surfaces. Each batch offered a subtle variation in warmth, casting a soft, golden glow across ornate initials and quiet margins. The gentle aroma of wood smoke hung lightly in the air, creating a serene environment where every motion was measured and rhythmic. Scribes worked in harmony with the fading natural light, letting the day draw to a peaceful close as the amber ink slowly set into the vellum, preserving thoughts in soft tones that invite the mind to rest. Farther north, amidst the gentle murmur of the Rhine River, a different craft of ink making was quietly emerging to meet the needs of movable metal type. In 1440s Mainz, Germany, printer Johannes Gutenberg formulated a durable oil-based ink by slowly simmering linseed oil and pine resin into a clear varnish, mixing in carbon lampblack to yield a velvety black paste that clung evenly to metal type without bleeding. Unlike the water-based inks of earlier manuscript traditions, which would pool or smear against metallic surfaces, this dense, viscous mixture rested smoothly upon each individual letter form. The gentle simmering of the oil was a meticulous process, requiring constant, low heat to achieve the precise viscosity needed to hold the dark pigment in suspension. As the resin dissolved smoothly into the warm oil, it created a rich vehicle that allowed the lampblack to coat each metal face with remarkable uniformity. When pressed against damp sheets of paper, the ink transferred cleanly, leaving crisp, dark impressions that dried with lasting permanence. The quiet rhythm of the print shop, the soft stirring of the warm varnish, and the steady turn of the press marked a tranquil revolution in recording human thought. These advancements in ink formulation reflected a deep, patient understanding of materials, bridging the world of hand-copied manuscripts and the newly blossoming craft of print. Whether drawn gently onto smooth vellum with a feather quill, or pressed steadily onto paper with cast metal letters, each line carried the quiet dedication of artisans who honored the slow passage of time. The warm amber hues of soot-derived bistre ink and the rich, dark depths of oil-based lampblack paste both allowed human knowledge to rest quietly upon the page for centuries to come. In the soft hush of those historic workshops, as evening shadows stretched long across wooden workbenches, the careful blending of oil, soot, and resin became a calming ritual. The steady, quiet labor of mixing pigments offered a gentle rhythm to the end of the day, leaving behind enduring marks that still whisper of quiet rooms, patient hands, and the peaceful evolution of the written word. As summer gradually yields to the gentle chill of early autumn across the quiet valleys of Renaissance Europe, the landscape changes in subtle, comforting ways. High in the orchards and along the edges of ancient stone walls, the heavy branches of Persian walnut trees sway softly in the evening breeze, weighed down by clusters of ripening fruit. For centuries, artisans and scholars looked to these groves not only for their harvest, but also for the quiet materials needed to record thought upon paper. The outer shells of the walnuts, encased in thick, pliant outer hulls, hold a natural richness formed slowly through months of sunshine and rain. Long before these husks drop away to reveal the hard shell beneath, they accumulate dense, earthy pigments that are ideal for the craft of ink making. As twilight settles over timbered workshops, craftsmen gather these fallen fruits from the damp grass, carrying them indoors, where the warm fire offers welcome shelter from the evening mist. The work of transforming plant matter into writing fluid demands no haste, relying instead on simple observation, patience, and a deep appreciation for the quiet rhythms of nature. In Renaissance Europe, scribes crafted warm brown ink from the fleshy green husks of ripe Persian walnuts, simmering them slowly in spring water until the liquid turned into a soothing, earth-toned sepia. The process began by carefully peeling the soft green coverings away from the inner nuts, their bruised surfaces releasing a fresh, resinous scent into the quiet scriptorium. Placed into a heavy iron kettle, the husks were covered with pure water drawn fresh from nearby streams. Set over a low flame, the liquid was brought not to a violent boil, but delicate simmer that allowed rich tannins to dissolve without scorching. Over many quiet hours, as steam drifted toward the wooden rafters, the pale water slowly shifted in color, darkening from a soft golden tea into a deep shade of brown. A wooden spoon was used now and then to stir the broth gently, ensuring that every husk yielded its color. The scent of damp wood and warm earth filled the room, creating an atmosphere of deep tranquility, while the ink took shape inside the pot. Once the liquid achieved its desired depth and body, the vessel was set aside to cool slowly near the hearth, allowing any heavy sediment to settle peacefully to the bottom. Scribes then filtered the dark fluid through fine linen cloth, catching any remaining fibers and leaving behind a smooth, lustrous liquid ready for ceramic jars or small glass bottles. Unlike iron gall inks, which could sometimes prove acidic over centuries, this natural walnut extract possessed a gentle, non-corrosive quality that preserved both delicate paper fibers and trimmed quill tips. When a feather pen was dipped into the dark well and touched to a sheet of smooth rag paper, the ink flowed in clean, graceful lines, drying into a warm, velvet brown that felt both grounded and timeless. Each stroke on the page seemed to carry a subtle piece of the quiet orchard from which it came, offering a restful visual harmony that invited calm reflection. As the candles burned low and night fully enveloped the quiet study, the newly written pages were left to dry softly in the cool evening air. In the tranquil workrooms of 16th century Ottoman Istanbul, as the warm evening light slowly receded across stone courtyards, the meticulous art of calligraphy began long before a reed pen ever touched a leaf of paper. The sheets resting upon low, polished wooden desks had been painstakingly crafted from gathered linen and cotton textiles, beat into pulp by water-powered hammers, settled over fine wire molds, and air-dried into sturdy pages. Resilient and long-lasting, untreated rag paper possessed an organic texture, a delicate landscape of tiny interwoven fibers that could catch a fine pen point or absorb liquid ink unevenly if left in its raw state. Calligraphers understood that achieving fluid, effortless lettering required a disciplined patience, refining the matte, porous surface through a sequence of quiet, deliberate preparations that included sizing with wheat starch or rice starch to seal the internal pores against absorption. Beneath the gentle, warm glow of oil lamps, the workshop became a sanctuary of quiet focus, where the gentle rustle of paper and every slow, deliberate movement served to calm the mind while preparing the medium for the peaceful night ahead. The final step in this transformation involved a slow, mechanical flattening of the sheet's surface, requiring tools selected for their weight, smoothness, and thermal density. Among these, handheld burnishers crafted from agate, a dense, microcrystalline form of quartz, carved into rounded, egg-like shapes that fit comfortably in the artisan's palm, were held in high esteem for their unyielding hardness and glass-like surface. Before the stone met the page, a microscopic layer of soft mineral lubricant was needed to prevent any abrasive friction from tearing the delicate rag fibers or marring the sheet's face. In 16th century Ottoman Istanbul, calligraphers burnished rag paper using a rounded agate stone lubricated with a trace of soapstone, smoothing the sheet with quiet, rhythmic strokes until it gleamed like polished silk. The repetitive back-and-forth motion of the cool agate compressed the raised fibers, pushing down any stray filaments and compacting the starch, sizing deep into the internal matrix of the page. This subtle compaction created a uniform, highly receptive layer, allowing liquid inks, whether composed of pine soot and gum arabic or oak galls and iron sulfate, to sit crisply upon the surface without feathering or bleeding into adjacent fibers. With each continuous, measured glide of the agate across the sheet, a soft, hypnotic rhythm filled the dim room, mirroring the serene stillness of the surrounding evening. Under the calligrapher's steady hand, the once rough rag paper gradually acquired a gentle sheen, catching the ambient lamp light with a soft, satin-like luminescence that felt extraordinarily soothing to the touch. The surface turned wonderfully smooth, offering no resistance to the fingers, yet retaining the structural strength, weight, and flexibility imparted by its textile origins. A final gentle brush of a soft cloth removed any lingering traces of soapstone powder, leaving behind a sheet that was simultaneously supple, dense, and perfectly flat. Resting quietly on the low wooden table in the darkening workshop, the finished page stood ready to receive the fluid curves of classic scripts, holding within its smoothed fibers the promise of enduring memory and quiet, peaceful study as the night deepened into restful silence. Across the quiet, frost-dusted valleys of East Asia, paper was not merely manufactured, it was nurtured in harmony with the gentle turn of the seasons. In the quiet villages of Korea, the craft reached a delicate peak where patience met the cold clarity of nature. Here, the inner bark of the paper mulberry tree was harvested with care, stripped away in long, supple ribbons, and brought to the edge of clear winter waters. During the Joseon Dynasty, Korean artisans crafted resilient, hanji paper in the coldest winter months, soaking paper mulberry fibers in icy mountain streams so the freezing water would tighten the plant filaments without damaging their natural silkiness. The frigid temperatures slowed down decay and kept the fibers pristine, allowing the natural mucilage from hibiscus roots, known as dak pool, to glide evenly through the vat when mixed later. As the artisans lifted the fine bamboo screens through the cold slurry, moving them rhythmically side to side, the tightened mulberry threads aligned in a delicate, crisscross web. The resulting sheets dried into a paper of extraordinary strength and soft, lusterless warmth, capable of enduring for 1,000 years while feeling as light and gentle as a passing breeze in an autumn courtyard. Far across the seas and several decades later, the tranquil rhythm of paper creation took on another soothing form along the windswept waterways of northern Europe. In the low-lying landscapes of the Dutch countryside, where windmills turned steadily against soft gray skies, papermakers sought a gentler, more efficient way to prepare old textiles for the vat. Prior to this era, heavy wooden stampers pounded soaked rags for days, producing a rhythmic thud that echoed through river valleys. But in 1670s, Zondam, Netherlands, papermakers invented the Hollander beater. Using a rotating wooden cylinder fitted with metal blades to gently shear soaked linen rags into a fine, cloud-like pulp. As the wind-powered cylinder turned within its oval wooden trough, the rags drifted continuously in a smooth, looping current, passing between the roll and a bedplate below. The sharp blades did not crush or destroy the linen fibers, but rather teased them apart into soft, feather-light strands suspended in clear water. This continuous shearing motion transformed coarse canvas and worn household linens into a uniform, creamy slurry with remarkable speed and quiet consistency, creating a foundation for paper that felt exceptionally smooth to the touch. Whether listening to the crystalline murmur of an icy stream in Korea, or the steady, rhythmic swooshing of water inside a Dutch windmill, the essence of making paper remained a quiet conversation between water, fiber, and time. Each method, born of local landscape and thoughtful observation, sought only to transform raw, humble materials into a quiet canvas capable of holding human thought. The patient, Korean artisans working in the silence of deep winter, and the Dutch millers tending their water-filled troughs, both understood that true quality rested in the gentle treatment of the plant filament. As the fibers rested, floating serenely in their watery baths before settling onto the absorbent felt, they embodied a slow and peaceful craftsmanship. The soft rustle of finished sheets, stacked gently in cool drying rooms, carries a sense of quiet stillness, a soothing reminder of how human ingenuity once moved to the calm, unhurried cadence of nature. Along the quiet, winding streams of 18th century England, the gentle rhythms of paper mills filled the rural countryside with a steady, soothing whisper. In the picturesque county of Kent, where clear waters flowed past verdant hills and silent pastures, generations of skilled craftsmen spent their days immersed in the slow, methodical art of papermaking. Water wheels turned with a soft, rhythmic gurgle in the gentle current, lifting heavy wooden hammers that worked tirelessly to break down clean linen rags into a delicate, pale pulp suspended in large wooden vats. For centuries prior, the paper produced in these quiet workshops bore the faint, textured impressions of traditional wire frames, subtle parallel ridges, and crosslines known as laid marks, left behind by the rigid construction of the molds. While these subtle linear patterns served their purpose well for generations of writers, there lingered a quiet desire for a writing surface that felt softer, smoother, and completely uniform beneath the light touch of a pen. The daily atmosphere within these historic mills was one of unhurried patience, where every individual sheet of paper was lifted manually from the liquid vat, allowed to drain slowly, and placed carefully between thick wool felts to dry naturally in the cool, ambient air. In the year 1757, within the tranquil surroundings of Maidstone, Kent, English papermaker James Whatman introduced a remarkable and influential refinement to this ancient craft known as wove paper. By replacing traditional ribbed wire molds with a fine brass screen, he succeeded in producing seamless sheets that allowed quills to drift effortlessly across the page. This new mesh, carefully woven much like fine metallic cloth, distributed the suspended linen fibers with complete structural uniformity, creating an unblemished surface that felt soft and remarkably smooth to the touch. The absence of heavy wire chain lines meant that ink could rest evenly upon the paper fibers without feathering or catching on raised ridges. Whatman's quiet innovation at his turkey mill in Maidstone transformed the tactile experience of writing and bookmaking, offering calligraphers, artists, and scholars a serene canvas of unprecedented clarity. The gentle glide of a sharpened goose quill over this pristine surface brought a quiet ease to long hours of copying manuscripts, recording ledger entries, and sharing quiet thoughts across distances. As this smooth wove paper gained appreciation across the continent, it subtly transformed the presentation of written thoughts, printed books, and delicate watercolor artwork. Renowned printers and engravers discovered that fine copperplate lines could be rendered with absolute precision, while subtle ink washes settled gracefully into the uniform grain of the sheet without pooling in structural grooves or ridges. The soft, natural off-white hue of rag-based wove paper offered a restful, soothing contrast against deep iron gall ink, making pages visually comforting during quiet evening reading by candlelight. The patient dedication of paper artisans working along the peaceful riverbanks of Kent had quietly elevated a simple material into an enduring medium of beauty and calm. Even today, handling one of those early 18th century sheets evokes a sense of stillness, revealing how thoughtful craftsmanship can turn raw natural elements into a peaceful vessel for human expression. As the centuries folded gently one into another, the quiet craft of ink making continued its steady, patient journey, seeking colors that felt as organic and soothing as the earth itself. In the calm hush of 18th century studios, where daylight filtered softly through high glass windows onto wooden drafting tables, artists and artisans experimented with subtle natural pigments to capture the warmth of shadow and form. Until this period, dark inks were often derived from oak galls, soot, or mineral deposits, yielding rich blacks and deep iron tones that grew darker with time. Yet, there remained a desire for a softer tone, a rich, velvety brown that could capture the delicate nuances of washed drawings and the tender stillness of dusk. Paper, by now refined into supple sheets of handmade cotton and linen rag, stood ready to absorb these gentler hues, holding every subtle stroke with enduring patience. In quiet workshops across Europe, painters observed how traditional iron gall inks, while lasting, could sometimes bite gently into paper fibers over time. A milder medium with a naturally warm undertone promised not only visual elegance, but also a gentle harmony between liquid ink and paper. This quest for a softer medium reached a quiet milestone in 1780's Dresden, where artist Jacob Sadelman introduced true sepia ink by extracting dark pigment from dried Mediterranean cuttlefish sacks, treating it with mild alkalis to produce a warm brown ink that flowed smoothly from reed and quill pens. Sadelman realized that the natural defensive fluid of the cuttlefish contained an exceptionally fine, light-fast pigment that could be ground into powder and gently dissolved in an alkaline bath to yield a smooth liquid. When mixed with water or light binding agents, this newly perfected sepia ink produced a remarkably rich range of chestnut and warm umber tones, allowing artists to lay down delicate washes of light or build up deep, tranquil shadows with equal ease. The liquid moved across paper without clogging, allowing the finest point of a quill to trace faint, graceful lines that dried into a serene finish. The introduction of sepia transformed the quiet art of monochrome drawing, offering a shade that mirrored the warm dusk light slipping across old rag paper. Artists found that even a single drop of sepia diluted in clear water yielded a full spectrum of gentle midtones, perfect for depicting quiet architectural studies, calm landscapes, and the soft contours of classical forms. Because the ink possessed a neutral acidity compared to iron gall formulations, it rested peacefully upon paper fibers without causing deterioration, preserving the subtle clarity of every line and wash. The gentle warmth of sepia drawings evoked a sense of timeless calm, as if the image had been bathed in the golden glow of a slow afternoon. In the stillness of the late afternoon studio, the steady dipping of a pen into a well of warm sepia became a ritual of quiet focus. Each stroke absorbed seamlessly into the woven texture of the sheet, creating an enduring record of careful observation and silent devotion. As evening arrived and shadows lengthened across wooden workbenches, these sepia-tinted pages were set aside to dry, holding their comforting hues in absolute silence, inviting deep rest and peaceful sleep. As papermaking spread across regions and centuries, the craft gradually expanded from a purely functional pursuit into an art of quiet reflection and aesthetic grace. In peaceful workshops, where time moved at the slow, deliberate pace of settling dust, artisans began exploring subtle ways to imbue finished sheets with delicate textures, soft tones, and flowing patterns. The blank sheet was no longer merely a practical medium for recording words, but but a tranquil field where light and shadow could mingle in gentle harmony. Water, which had long served to separate and interlace plant fibers in large wooden vats, found a new purpose as a liquid canvas. In this quiet meeting of water, ink, and paper, craftsmen discovered that fluid motion could be captured and preserved in enduring beauty. The atmosphere in these traditional spaces was defined by a calming stillness, where quiet was carefully preserved, so that even the gentlest movement of air across a water trough could be observed and appreciated. This gentle synthesis of water and ink reached a remarkably refined expression in medieval East Asia. In 1220s Japan, court artisans created marbled asterisk suminagashi paper by floating drops of dark pine soot ink and natural ox gall on the surface of quiet water, blowing gently to create delicate, wave-like rings before laying down a single sheet of paper to capture the floating pattern. The ox gall acted as a subtle agent, reducing surface tension and allowing the dark pine soot pigment to expand into floating ribbons rather than sinking into the depths of the basin. Each faint breath from the artisan brought a soft, unhurried shift to the concentric circles resting on the pool, forming swirls that resembled gentle ripples on a calm pond, or the subtle grain of ancient wood. When the absorbent handmade paper touched the water's surface, it lifted the floating ink instantly, drawing the fine lines into its fibers while keeping their delicate alignment perfectly intact. The resulting sheets possessed a misty, understated elegance, prized for poetry anthologies, royal decrees, and thoughtful imperial correspondence. Looking closely at the finished paper, one could trace the soft, organic pathways of the ink, as though following a tranquil stream at twilight. The delicate technique called for deep patience, guiding the artisan to work alongside natural forces, gravity, surface tension, and still air, rather than imposing rigid form upon the liquid. This quiet collaboration brought a restful rhythm to the workshop, where every movement was slow, deliberate, and deeply comforting. As sheets dried in warm, quiet rooms, the ink settled deeply into the plant fibers, preserving the memory of a brief liquid movement for centuries to come. Writing or reading upon such decorated paper offered a meditative pause, inviting both writer and reader into a shared moment of serene, quiet focus. In the long, peaceful evolution of paper and ink, these decorative methods show how practical craft merged seamlessly with quiet beauty. The gentle dance between dark soot, clear water, and soft plant fibers stands as a timeless testament to the deep, peaceful harmony found in ancient arts. As night falls and silence settles around us, the soft memory of floating ink invites a quiet rest, letting the mind drift peacefully along the quiet, steady, and restful currents of history. As the traditions of paper and ink making evolved across continents, craftsmen increasingly sought ways to engage not only the eyes of the reader, but also the subtle rhythm of breath and quiet contemplation. In the peaceful valleys of northern India, papermakers perfected methods that elevated a simple sheet into a sensory work of art. During the 16th century in Kashmir, papermakers immersed freshly pressed sheets in a warm bath infused with saffron threads and wild iris roots, creating a pale golden paper that released a faint, calming fragrance as pages were turned. This gentle infusion did more than impart a delicate shade of warm gold. It softened the texture of the plant fibers, smoothing away any remaining roughness and leaving behind a surface that welcomed the gentle glide of a reed pen. The subtle botanical aroma lingered in the paper for decades, transforming the simple act of turning a leaf into an experience of deep tranquility. Readers moving through these manuscripts in quiet libraries or quiet evening courtyards would find themselves enveloped in a subtle mist of herbal warmth, where each movement of the page stirred memories of mountain valleys, spring blooms, and the deliberate pace of patient handcraft. Further south, across the arid lands of Western India, a complementary practice took root among monastic scribes who dedicated their lives to preserving sacred texts. Here, long dried strips of palm leaves served as the primary canvas, bound together with soft cotton cords. To write upon these delicate strips, scribes prepared dark, durable pigments using soot collected from oil lamps. In medieval Western India, scribes writing Jain palm leaf manuscripts blended fine lampblack with a whisper of natural camphor and sandalwood resin, ensuring the dried black ink released a soft fragrance whenever a page was gently turned. The inclusion of camphor served a quiet double purpose, acting as a natural preservative that protected the organic leaves from insects while cooling the senses of the reader. The sweet, woody notes of sandalwood resin bonded seamlessly with the fine carbon particles, binding the rich black pigment onto the smooth surface of the palm leaf. As time passed, the bound leaves would rest in dark wooden chests, preserving both the visual wisdom inscribed upon them and the soothing aromatic essence infused into every line of script. The preparation of these aromatic materials required an extraordinary depth of patience and sensory awareness. Artisans would carefully grind raw sandalwood against damp stone blocks, yielding a smooth paste that could be mixed into ink or dissolved into sizing solutions. Camphor crystals, harvested from ancient evergreen trees, were crushed until they formed a powder so fine it dissolved seamlessly without leaving gritty residue. Likewise, the extraction of color and fragrance from wild iris roots demanded a slow, rhythmic maceration in tempered spring water, allowing the delicate essential oils to bind gently with the rag pulps and vegetal fibers. When these elements met the carbon pigments or golden plant dyes, they created a subtle harmony between visual form and aromatic presence. Every step of the craft was quiet and measured, matching the deliberate cadence of monastic life, where time was marked not by ticking clocks, but by the gradual drying of fresh ink and the restful stillness of peaceful libraries. As our long journey through the history of paper and ink reaches its final, quiet horizon, we find ourselves reflecting on the sheer variety of forms that paper has taken across time and distance. In southern China, papermaking took on forms as graceful and light as air. During the 19th century in Guangdong, artisans crafted smooth pith paper by unrolling the soft white core of the Tetrapanax papyrus tree with a broad knife, turning the sliced spiral into delicate, translucent sheets. This process required no soaking, no boiling, and no pulping, relying instead on the inherent elegance of the living plant. With incredible patience and a steady, rhythmic hand, the craftsman guided the flat blade around the cylinder of pith, producing a single, continuous sheet that uncurled smoothly onto a wooden table. These delicate squares, celebrated for their luminous, velvety surface and organic texture, became a favored medium for delicate watercolor paintings of native flora, birds, and tranquil daily life. When held up to the soft evening light, each translucent leaf revealed the microscopic, honeycomb-like cellular matrix of the tree, frozen in quiet stillness like frost upon a quiet window pane. It was an art form defined by lightness, silence, and absolute harmony with the gifts of nature. Looking back across the vast expanse of human history, the evolution from beaten tree bark and river papyrus to cotton rag pulp, pine soot inks, and translucent pith sheets tells a story of quiet patience. Each era added its own soft chapter to the craft, driven by a simple, universal desire to record human thought and let it rest gently upon a physical surface. Whether crafted in sunlit workshops along the Nile, beneath the eaves of ancient Chinese studios, or within the silent scriptoria of medieval monasteries, every sheet of paper and drop of ink was born from a slow, natural rhythm. Water, wood, earth, and fire were guided by steady hands working in unison with the unhurried passage of the day. The rhythmic grinding of an ink stick on a stone basin, the soft splash of plant fibers suspended in water, and the gentle press of felt against a fresh sheet, all belong to a world that moved without rush or noise. Writing was not an act of urgency, but an invitation to stillness, allowing thoughts to settle quietly, like dark pigment soaking softly into pale, welcoming fibers. Now, as the stories of ancient artisans, ink masters, and forgotten mills drift slowly into the background, the quiet atmosphere of the workshop begins to rest. The long-handled brushes are rinsed clean in cool water and hung to dry. The inkstones lie polished and still in their wooden boxes, and the finished sheets of paper rest in neat, undisturbed stacks beneath the gathering night. The work of the day is entirely complete, and nothing more remains to be recorded. The history of paper and ink leaves us with a comforting, peaceful truth. That thought, much like a drop of ink in quiet water, naturally diffuses, softens, and finds its perfect rest. Allow your mind to rest now, drifting gently alongside the soft memory of unrolling paper and fading ink as the surrounding silence wraps around you. Sleep deeply, carried by the calm legacy of patient hands and unbroken rest.